You've had a hard day out on the town, having fun at a concert of your favourite band. You've come all this way across the country to see them, but now you're exhausted and need to rest. You check in at your hotel and find a lovely room, and perhaps more importantly, a lovely bed await you. The day will linger in your memory for years, but for now, you need to get some rest before doing a little more exploring the following day, and then returning home. This is the opening setup of Room 606, an indie game you can play for free right now. Check the description for the link. It's not a terribly long game, with some playthroughs taking only a few minutes, but it comes with 5 different endings that each explain a little more about the titular Room 606 that you're staying in. Because, of course, this is a horror channel, so naturally, there's something terribly, terribly wrong about the room you're staying in for the night. But what? Let's take a look. The unnamed protagonist enters her hotel room and decides she'll take a shower before bed. There are numerous things you can do here, and it's the choices you make that will determine your ending, so let's run through them one by one. First, the protagonist decides to take a shower. However, once she exits the bathroom, the lights suddenly turn off and a strange lump of something appears in the middle of the room. Of course, once she turned the lights back on, it disappears. She could have sworn something was there, but maybe she was just imagining things. The lights also seem to be okay, so maybe it was just a small malfunction. She gets into bed, but during the night, she has a terrible nightmare. Everything is on fire, and she's about to burn with it. She wakes up and realizes it was nothing more than a dream. But then, a painting hanging on a nearby wall suddenly falls off, frightening her. First, the lights turning off by themselves, then the strange shadow in the room, then the horrible nightmare, and now this. To make matters worse, she finds a talisman hanging on the other side of the picture. Ugh, how creepy. It has to be somebody's idea of a bad joke, right? But she's not taking any chances. She decides to ask the front desk to put her in another room, and that's that. The weirdness ends, and her trip turns into a safe, fun one. But of course, that's not the full story. If the protagonist decides to drink some tea and then go to the toilet before bed, she finds out a little more about this haunted room. When the painting falls, again, she convinces herself that she's just imagining things and the painting falling off was nothing more than a coincidence. But when she wakes up again later that night, she sees something horrifying before her. The room is blackened and charred, with a stain on the floor that looks horrifyingly human. And near the TV, she finds a dark figure, apparently covered in blood, facing the other way. "Take me with you," it stutters before mumbling some nonsense that doesn't make any sense. Everything starts to go fuzzy before the protagonist wakes up and realizes she was dreaming again. It's 3:30 in the morning, and with all these strange occurrences, she hasn't exactly gotten much rest. She decides to stay awake until morning and safely sees the rise of the sun. When she leaves the following day, she learns that the hotel she was staying in is apparently famous for being haunted, and has been for quite some time. She doesn't really understand what happened to her that night, but she has never been back since. But clearly, this still isn't the full story. This time, if you drink something but don't go to the toilet before bed, we can find out a little more. The protagonist will wake up during the night and, this time, needs to go to the toilet. It's a little scary without the lights on, so she turns those on first and, once done with her business, tries to leave. But the door is locked. How could that be? Suddenly, the lights go out again. No amount of jiggling the handle will get the door to open, but when she heads over to the sink, she spots something horrifying. Something is watching her from the other side of the door. Still, the door won't open, but this time, she notices that it's slightly ajar in the mirror. Despite this, when she turns back around, Again, it's locked. One more time she checks the mirror, only to find the door locked and the shadowy figure much, much closer than before. She flees in terror, this time the door opening. But then the TV turns on by itself. "It's hot," a voice screams. "It's so hot." Before she can do anything, a figure appears behind her again, this time bursting into flames right before her eyes. Once more, she flees in terror, but immediately finds herself back in the same room. How could that be possible? But again, the flaming figure returns. She has to be dreaming again, right? After fleeing several times, constantly finding herself back in the same room, she realizes it's getting darker and darker. But now, the front door is locked as well. She's well and truly trapped. She screams for help, but nobody comes. It seems that the room itself has spirited her away. If, next time around, she decides to sleep with the lights on, she has another nightmare and wakes up to discover the lights are off. When she tries to turn them back on, the room appears to be on fire in various places. The fire consumes her, but then she wakes up in bed again, perfectly okay, and the light's still on. Just another dream. She drinks some water, goes to the toilet, then gets back in the bed. But this time, when she wakes up, the room is dark and ashy again, with a figure standing in the middle. Yes, yet another dream, and when she wakes up, the TV is on. She turns it off, but now she's fully awake. It's 3:10 in the morning, but she decides to try to sleep again. Again, the TV turns on, and a figure appears in the middle of the room. This time, it bursts into flames and chases her. This plays out much like before, constantly escaping through the front door, only to end up in the same room again. But this time, she ends up back in the dark, ashy room with a figure sitting on the chair in front of the mirror. The figure disappears when she asks them who they are, but she discovers a note on the table. It contains nothing but the character for death. A scene plays out before her eyes. This figure douses themselves in gas, and before she can stop them, they light themselves on fire. Of course, she wakes up in bed again, just another dream, but now it's morning. Time to get the hell out. She later discovers that a former employee of the hotel was having both work and home troubles, and this drove them to the brink. This employee then ultimately went into one of the rooms and set themselves on fire. The hotel was being renovated at the time, so the employee, a man, was the only person harmed. As such, the news didn't speak much of it. But ever since that day, numerous guests at the hotel have complained of suffering from sleep paralysis during the night, or seeing a dark figure standing in the room when they wake up to go to the toilet. She wonders if the spirit was trying to tell her something, like perhaps they wanted somebody to know what happened during their final moments. Or maybe, more horrifyingly, that spirit is now stuck there, unable to move on and forever in torment. Either way, she never went back to that hotel ever again after that night. At a later date, she visits a cafe and notices the waiter puts down 2 glasses of water for her, despite being there alone. Is she, perhaps, not as alone as she thinks anymore? With this, most of the story has been revealed, although there is still one more ending. If you drink tea 3 times before bed and then shower, a figure will appear by the protagonist's bedside as she sleeps. Matters proceed in much the same way, and when she wakes up and goes to the toilet, again, she's locked in. She finally escapes to a black and ashy room with the TV on. When she turns it off, a dark figure comes up behind her before disappearing. Again, the TV comes back on, but this time, the figure approaches her, giving her a little jump scare before fade to black. The next morning, A hotel staff member finds her passed out on the same spot, having grown worried when she didn't check out by leaving time. When she wakes up, she finds herself in the hospital. Turns out she stayed in a famous haunted hotel, and now the memories of her fun trip are ruined. She returns home, feeling rather depressed, and then the unthinkable happens. News informs us that there was a fire in an apartment building, and a young woman's body was discovered in the remains. Turns out her name was Arizuka Michiru, and she was 24 years old. Fade to black. Naturally, all of the endings can't coexist with each other, but together they do paint a larger whole. A hotel employee, suffering from a mental breakdown, took his own life in the building he worked in as it was being renovated. After that, numerous guests reported various hauntings, and Michiru ended up being one of them. Depending on your choices, she can either make it out alive and perfectly well, haunted, or damned to repeat what happened in her own home. Creepy. But that's the story of room 606. What did you guys think of this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.